Nutrition is key to our children's ability to learn. And I work for the Food System Economic Partnership, which is an economic development nonprofit serving Southeast Michigan. And I also serve on the state's Agriculture Commission. October is National Farm to School Month, and there's been a group of us around the state that have worked on the Michigan Good Food Charter, which lists out priorities for the state up to year 2020 as far as local purchasing of food. The Farm to School program involves schools sourcing food from area farms for the school meals program, and the University of Michigan has been a wonderful leader in this movement. But I wondered what your opinion is about mandating local purchasing of food to drive our economy. Agriculture is the second leading industry in our state and could potentially become #1 given the state of manufacturing these days. And that's also an economic driver. So your opinion on local sourcing of food for the school meals program?
I think and I hope we do have good nutrition standards, and we've improved them over recent years. I don't know about mandating, because you get into the issue of cost, et cetera, but I think encouraging, somehow finding incentives or somehow finding ways to support what you're describing, which is wonderful. More healthy local food, more engagement with local producers, finding ways that we encourage that, help it along, incent it, I certainly think makes a ton of sense.
Has the state board taken a position on banning pop in schools?
You know, I think we have in our nutrition standards to try to, yes.
And it's done no good?
It's less good than a lot of other good things.
Well, the problem is schools are making money.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So why don't you guys tell the schools not to do it?
I think we have, through our policy fiat, we have not hitched it, we haven't hitched it to dollars or anything. But we said, this is the policy, you should not have soft drinks in your school.
How about local apples instead of pop in the vending machines?
I think, and you can help me if we haven't framed our policy guidance, which is a tool we have. Folks can ignore it if they want, and sometimes they do. And sometimes we can hook some teeth into it or get some help in the legislature. Your money is going to be pulled. Bullying is the same type of policy guidance. We have anti-bullying policies for all the schools. Not all the schools have animated them. That's why we need legislative help to have meaningful anti-bullying attached, so it's got some teeth in it.
Question here, please.
Yep.
Mr. Austin, most of the discussion today seems to have been around initiatives to improve education in Michigan. You mentioned funding earlier, and the comment that I recall hearing from you is that we just need more investment in it. As a taxpayer, when I hear the word investment, I hear the word higher taxes. And I'm just wondering where this funding for every good initiative is going to come from. The economy in here in Michigan has been in difficult shape since 2008, actually since 2001. Where is the funding for all this good stuff coming from?
And let me be very, very clear, and also be clear on where I'm speaking for myself and where I'm speaking for the state board. We as a state board have together said there is lots of money we can save through legacy cost changes, through consolidation of shared services, where we can find hundreds of millions of dollars that, in my view, we should repurpose into other parts of education. But also, the dirty little secret is that, yes, our economy has collapsed, the auto industry for the last 5 years. Actually, alongside that, we have been lowering taxes for 12 straight years. Starting under John Engler, we had a 7.3% flat personal income tax. Every year it got dropped, so it's down to 4.1, and the governor, to his credit, encouraged stopping that for this year. So we have been cutting taxes actually more than the economic collapse has reduced revenues. We used to be bumping the Headley limit for the allowable taxation. We are now $8 or $9 billion as a state below the limit. Meaning we have given up lots of money that we used to tax ourselves for over the last 12 years that we could be putting into our roads, our higher education institutions, our beautiful outdoors, cleaning our beaches and making sure our parks are open. Those are investments that matter to our economy. And so, this thing, we don't have the money. We've chosen, very quietly, to not give ourselves the money. If we went back to the good old days under John Engler, we'd have billions more to invest in K-12, higher ed, roads, bridges, which are crumbling. It's embarrassing. We can't match the federal highway money to pave our roads. It's crazy.
Did you vote for John Engler?
No.
Okay, just checking. All right, final question here.
Yeah, it's a follow-up on the money issue, because I think most teachers do a good job and are trying to do a good job. Most school districts are trying to do the best they can with the limited resources that they have. But lately, we're seeing higher class sizes, we're seeing elimination of electives, we're seeing no buses for sports and all these things that impact the quality and the perception of our schools. And yet, when we had a lot of money, I don't think it was perfectly correlated with performance. We spent more than most states, and our performance didn't really reflect that. And I'm wondering how much money is the answer. But I also want to note that we did have an opportunity. One opportunity that we have is to pass a special millage countywide, and we voted that down. And we had it within our means to do something about it, and we chose not to do that, and I think that was regrettable. But I just wonder, in your fantasy world, how could we correct the funding issue, and to what extent would that make a difference? I think a lot of these initiatives, not all of them, but many of them are good. They're not costing a lot of money either. But if we do have more money, how do we know that that will improve things?
Right.
Thank you.
I hope it's the ideal world, not the fantasy world, or a better world. And I'm very clear, we need to couple, in my view, in strategic investment, but only if we've made the reforms that make sure it's being spent better. So I agree with you totally. I started my remarks by saying, if I were to step back and say, what money do we need for education? We actually need more money so that more kids who are eligible can get preschool. We need more money so higher ed's affordable and we're not decimating these engines of new economic creation. We could run K-12, and we could have run it 12 years ago with about the amount of money that we've dedicated to it, if we're making reforms in its operations to save money on non-instructional services, change legacy benefit systems. All of those are right reforms, and they didn't happen before. You're exactly right. So yes, fiscal crisis is an opportunity to, it's not something to waste, to help drive reforms that should have been made all along. But then I do think there are investments, that money that can be saved can be spent in other pieces of education. And in certain areas, we need more money for education, just as we need more money for our roads and our bridges and our parks.
Well, one obvious issue for school districts is the burden of retirement costs. And they have to pay more for retirement than most of the other people in this room have to pay for more retirement. It's about a 20% tax on payroll, a little more than that. And I'm wondering, there's been talk about doing something about that, but are we ever going to get the guts to do something so that 20% of our payroll is not dedicated? And
I totally agree.
To retirement.
And so let me just give you, if you will, there's an interesting history which I learned doing this Great Lakes-wide economic work. We in the Midwest and in Michigan invented the system after World War II that became kind of the social compact, the way we did pension and healthcare benefits. It was after World War II when the big employers in autos and steel and others, they wanted to keep and attract workers. And they began to offer healthcare benefits and very generous defined benefit pension plans in those big unionized sectors. At that time, Walter Reuther, UAW, and others, they wanted to do socialized medicine, they called it, national health care. That freaked out the big employers, saying, we don't want socialized anything. We'll pay for your health care. We'll pay for, defined benefit pensions. That became the pattern. I mean, we cut the deal. That became the nation's way we did health care. And the defined benefit pension, as you know, was the kind of, holy grail pension in the 50s and 60s. The public sector employees just copied that 10 or 15 years later in Wisconsin and Michigan. Oh, we want that benefit too. So they negotiated with their employers, city governments, of which we have tons, and municipal governments, and teachers' unions. We want that too. So they just copied what the private sector had done. Fast forward, the private sector, as you know, over 40 years has they moved to 401ks and co-pays on their pensions. So only 20% of private sector employees have a defined benefit pension anymore, while 80% of the public sector employees still do because they negotiated it and kept it. And the healthcare system, you know, our private sector firms, our poster children, GM, we've struggled hard to get out from under that legacy healthcare burden that your employer has to pay for in the private sector, just recently through bankruptcies, and national health care. Now, what we're fighting right now is that the public sector employees have to catch up with the paradigm that the private sector has moved to, which is much more co-pay, co-ownership on your pensions, not as generous healthcare systems. We can't afford it, couldn't afford it in the private sector, we can't afford it in the public sector. That's what we're getting to now. Some places like Wisconsin are getting to it by trying to also destroy unions. We in Michigan, I hope, are getting to it, and also the way not to get to it was by cutting all the school districts' funding to say, you've got to renegotiate, because some were actually renegotiating and changing these regimes on their own. And we should reward those and insist that others change them who haven't.
All right, final question. Business people in this audience, what can they do to help you advance the agenda?
Well, if you buy the fantasy world, that I'm describing, I think your understanding and support for the kind of rigorous expectations, accountable systems, high-performing norms for our kids and our teachers, etc., but also being willing to support, it's not all about a prosperous state, which is proven, is the lowest business taxes and ending all government services is not the recipe for creating conditions that create economic growth. The best educated states, the best support for learning and universities and creation, a state that has infrastructure that allows you to participate in the global economy, roads, bridges, rail, cyber. These are the things actually that are more important for economic growth and new job creation than lowering taxes and ending all business regulation. And if you look at Texas, you look at North Carolina, you look at other states, the fact that Austin is one of the most thriving communities in the nation has very little to do, and I'm not trying to sound partisan, with whatever Rick Perry did down there. It has everything to do with, in Texas, they have massive amounts of gas and oil money that they've poured into the University of Texas and made it be one of the great universities to begin to rival U of M, while we've been cutting U of M and make it be this hothouse and cool city and everything, the place that people want to be, and high-tech business cluster, et cetera. That's what drives economic growth. So you need to help advance that argument.
Ladies and gentlemen, John Austin, President of the State Board. Thank you, Mr. President.